Greetings and welcome to another excellent chess video. This is game number 11 of the World Championship between Gukesh and Ding. This was a really crazy game which I saw, and one of the guys asked me, "Why don't you cover one of these games using your father's rules as a guide to explain what's going on?" I thought, you know what? That's a great idea. So here we are. So I'm going to um, give you the commentary based upon what you can see, number one, in the analysis of the evaluation by the engine. And then I'll give you my father's rules, the explanation of why each move was played, to give you an idea of how to, coalesce these different principles in different times in the game. Because the thing about chess is that there's so many rules that you use to help you play well, but sometimes you have a rule that helps you play well, and then you have another rule or principle that helps you play well, and one takes precedence over the other depending on different situations. So let's go. Gukesh has the white pieces, Ding has the black. So Gukesh opens with knight f3. Basic stuff, trying to, get your pieces out, and good squares controlling center squares, which are the most valuable, these four here, e4, e5, d5, d4. Conceptually, these are the most important squares. So this is why you're going to find in good players' games, you're going to have a struggle for control of the center as a general rule. Ding responds with d5, super solid. Reti opening. Here you have the hyper-modern concept is to attack central pawns like the d5 pawn with the c4 flank pawn, because pawn takes pawn doesn't work. You don't, quote, win a pawn here, because he can simply play queen a4 check and then queen takes c4 if that's what white wants to do. In the Queen's Gambit, one of the things you learn from studying it is that the Queen's Gambit is d4, d5, c4, and if pawn takes, it's not a true gambit, because you can just literally queen a4 check and take the pawn back like this, all right? So this is very safe from both black or white's perspective. If pawn on d4 for white, black can respond with a c5 pawn. Again, he's not really losing a pawn because of the queen check opportunity. So this is a valuable flank lesson that applies all the way up to the World Championship, okay? So there you go. Ding, elects to press forward to gain space and also relieve some of the tension here. This is common, opening theory. Now, this move was a surpriser, to some of the grandmasters as well. It was like b4, and this engages like a reverse. I think it was a Grandmaster Leko said that it's like a Volga gambit, or it might have been a niche who said this, reverse Volga gambit or reverse Blumenfeld, which is also the same kind of formation potentially that happens with a reverse Benko gambit. They didn't mention that specifically, but whichever one is the most common to you, all three of those are very similar. So this is a space grabbing, and one of the weaknesses that black has made here, weakness, okay, is a, judiciously used term. He's neglected central control with like e5 or what have you. He can't play e5, but I'm just giving a general example. And so because he took time to move d4 to reduce the tension, Gukesh was like, I'll just play b4 and take up even more space. So he's, taken the idea of counterattacking the center and then played b4, which is, kind of awesome, actually. It's like, it's one of those things that's so awesome. You're like, I wonder why can't you do that? You never see people play this. Well, Gukesh is so good he can play it, which is good because it's like, I didn't know you could do that and not lose. Now, conversely, Ding replies classically c5, attacking the undefended b pawn. This was another move of interest, e3. Again, you're not really, again, losing a pawn. C takes b4, queen checks, you just take it back if you want to. So since it's not a real threat of losing a pawn, Gukesh is continuing in the hypermodern style, attack the center pawns now that they have been fixed on dark squares. All right? Same thing, knight to f6. You can't make pawn moves forever. You're going to ask for trouble. And brother, one of the people you don't want to ask trouble for is Gukesh. That guy's a freak. All right, now things are getting up a little more I'm trying to think of a way to say this. Reinforcements. He's reinforcing the center there. So what do we have here? Now, Ding wants bishop g4, which is a very common idea because he'd like to play perhaps e6. And then if he plays e6 before the bishop moves, the bishop is trapped in jail. Okay? Because if black plays e6, white can play b5 and a4, and then this bishop has no future on that side of the board. So this is a flexibility move. And this is just general theory stuff. So now he's like, okay, e takes d4, c takes d4, and at some point he's going to play play pawn to d3. But first, Gukesh is like, h3, let me test your willingness or your commitment to playing bishop to g4. Are you trying to trade? Are you trying to just get over here, retreat h5, and then bishop g6? Let's find out. So he says, okay, I want to trade. I'm like, okay, fine. Queen takes. Obvious move. This is just obvious. So much better than playing pawn captures. This is just wrecks your structure. It's basic stuff, but never hurts to recognize what's happening. Now, not only does he save his structure, he has a cheesy threat. Queen takes b7. All right? So this is one of the things that's going to come about in this game is the long diagonal from g2 to b7. So again, since white has recaptured, threatening this pawn, black could have played b5. Knight c6, but b5 is a threat. Queen c7 is much more flexible. White's moved his queen, black moves his queen. You don't want to go crazy either way. No one has completed development or is even remotely close to completing development. They're not stupid. They didn't get there by being dumb. Okay? Play the smart moves. Don't get crazy. That's one of my father's rules. Don't get crazy. Again, I told you white is going to be playing d3. He plays d3 because there was also a counter threat. Queen takes c4. Not directly, but the bishop would be, guarding the pawn. But if he doesn't play d3, black is going to have this possibility potentially. So there's things that you want to avoid. This is natural to play d3 here. And as we can see later on, Gukesh is going to put this bishop on g2 with this queen on f3. You have a tremendous long diagonal battery. All right, so now tables have flipped a little bit. Ding is attacking b4. At some point, e6 is going to come and add the bishop's power. Not a big deal, but it's just one of those things. Hey, I'm here. Pay attention to what's going on. So the threat is simple. A takes b4. A takes b4. Rook takes free rook. So simple stuff. As my father would say, move it or lose it, buddy. Bishop d2 is kind of a blocking move. It blocks this knight's natural square. So I don't think bishop d2 is the right move. To me, the right move seems to be b5. And that's exactly what Gukesh plays, which is fine. The advantage of playing the pawn to b5 is that if Gukesh has a chance to play a4, then this bishop is going to have a tremendous square on a3 to counter the dark square bishop by black. Knight bd7, a very natural move in this kind of a position. You've already got one knight developed. Develop the second knight. You have plenty of time. There's no threats happening. So knight to c5, because of the pushing of the pawn, reduces the control of the c5 square, so that now black can play knight c5. This is a tremendous location, as in not really an outpost. An outpost square would be somewhere forward of the pawn chain, but it's kind of like a mid-range outpost. A very nice square that cannot be dislodged except by the bishop or the knight with a lot of moves. So super flexible. That's the reality there. It's super flexible. Okay, now Gukesh is giving you what I told you was going to be coming. Because of the play on d3, bishop to g2 is going to be super strong on this diagonal. So again, having said A, I'm going to set up to control c5 with the knight, or the queen's controlling it, and the knight's going to be the beneficiary of the queen's control of c5. Knight to c5, a tremendous position. And again, the knight posts on c5, the bishop posts on g2. Everything is still very close. Now, knight f d7 is done to reinforce the knight. Again, this is a flexibility. No matter what, if this knight gets exchanged off in the future, you're going to put another one right there on the same square. You know, it's not complicated. You know, there's an old saying, don't reinvent the wheel. So the flexibility factor of the knight on f6 isn't going anywhere. This knight is never going to d5 or e4, g4, h5. So flexibility, once again, is the word of the day. Having done all the business necessary with this little shadow moving around, castling, simple stuff, get your king out of the center. So now he's trying to mess with white's queen. I mean, the idea is not bad because it's battery here pounding on b7 really restricts black's motion of forces. The response that I saw here was really quite good and not 100% expected. This is kind of an uncomfortable position for white, relatively speaking, because he's attacking this d pawn, which is really annoying. So this move here to play queen f4, this knight is now pinned to the queen. It's not going anywhere. But he does have the ability to play knight takes d3. What would we do if he does that? That's the question. The question is, you got to counterattack. This is my dad's rule number 2, baby. If knight takes d3, in fact, I'm going to play this and see the computer is going to tell you the answer is going to be queen takes d4. Analysis. Queen to e4, very interesting. Queen takes d4. It doesn't like it. This is the natural move to me. Queen takes d4. I guess maybe he's got rook d8, e6. That's very interesting. Queen e4 is the move of choice, though. I guess you're threatening to play f4, and the knights are, guarding each other. But he's threatening to do some stuff like that, I suppose. You still have the option, if the queen's on e4, you still have the option of queen takes d4. You're just getting out of the attack of the knight. Knight takes d3 looks premature on the context of the black king has not castled and is technically vulnerable to potential attacks. And it's all good when you have the engine saying you can play this move and it's perfectly safe. But when you're sitting there face to face with a guy and it's just you and it's just him, yeah, knight takes d3. It looks like you're asking for it. All right. That looks like you're asking for it. So I think this is kind of the dichotomy that you have. Can you play knight c takes d3? The answer is yes. It's very solid, but it starts to open up the position in a non-safe way. And what happens is it's going to increase the sharpness of the position, and you're going to have to be looking and expending a lot of mental energy. What's he going to, use my dad's rule number 2. What's he trying to do to me? What's he trying to do to me? Every move, and it gets old. So it gets old for both sides, all right? So the smart guy, Ding, is over here going, rook d8. No need to be fancy, all right? This rook is going to come over here anyway. So let's give this rook a job. Rook to d8. And now the onus of pressure, since the rook is guarding this pawn, he's now threatening to play knight takes d3, potentially. All right, so rook to d1. What is the deal here? I guess, again, knight takes d3, queen to e4 looks like the move, but he can play just simply knight takes c1. So that's a good question. Let's take a look at this and see what happens. Knight to d3. Oh, rook takes d3. Oh, that's why. I missed that one. It happens. Knight takes d3. Duh. The knight's pinned to the queen, like I told you before, just rook takes. Duh. All right, so that's no longer possible. I forgot my own, observation. Now that's done primarily because I'm explaining this stuff and I got mentally distracted. In the game, it's tournament face. And that's highly unlikely, but it is possible. It does happen. The good news is, in the training of the analysis here, it's all good. Okay, so black plays g6. Why does he play g6? Bishop g7 is the answer to me. So, as my father would say here, what are you going to do, Bobby Fischer? All right. It just, I know this is upcoming at some point, a4 and bishop a3. This bishop doesn't have any, future on this c1 to h6 diagonal. And a4 is the move. Now, I went through the whole game and loaded it into the position, so I've already seen bishop to a3 at some point. I didn't specifically remember what move it's on, even though I wrote the game score down here. You can see it right there. Okay, so I wrote this down. What is this? This is move number 16, a4. I know bishop a3 is coming at some point, but you can see this in the pawn formation. It's called reading the defense. You see that bishop is going to g7. You don't have to be Magnus to see this, okay? It's fairly obvious. Bishop g7 is coming at some point. So here, yeah, I think, bishop g7 is looking very good because they're going to castle. Oh, h5. What in the heck is he doing? My dad's rule number 2. What's he trying to do to me? Well, I said, what the heck is he doing? It's a translation. It's the same phrase. Bishop h6, wouldn't be bad. because it would also distract this rook away from defense. So that's interesting. And this is why Gukesh is, the wave of the future. B6. How you like that, baby? Well, it's interesting. He cannot take queen takes b6, all right? Because queen takes free knight. That's what my father would tell you. But even if he could take it, this would be a permanently backwards pawn. If queen ever takes this, the rook comes over here, and it's going to be ugliness on b7. So even if you, quote, win a pawn in the future, yeah, not really. But again, it's easy to sit back here looking at history rather than, staring down a grandmaster Terminator face to face. All right? In tournament face, that's the way it is. So it's a very good and edgy move. Queen d6, keep the pawn under, view. Now he's threatening to play knight takes d3 at some point. Knight takes d3. Well, not exactly. But knight takes d3 here. Yes. Knight e takes no good because he could just play, right? Knight takes e3. Knight e takes d3 doesn't work, right? Because rook takes. No, I don't think so. Bishop a3 again. The knights are just being pinned by the queen to the queen, and really pinned by the bishop to the queen. On the c5 knight. So again, it doesn't take Magnus Carlsen to see this move. And there it is, bishop h6, like I told you. Now the advantage here is that there's no bishop here to distract this rook with the rule of defender tactic to get this d3 pawn. All right, I think two things we can do here. We can move this queen away. Every square is terrible except for queen h4, and then things are looking ugly. We also have bishop takes c5, the knight. So bishop takes knight puts a desperado to it. So bishop takes knight, bishop takes queen, you're safe. If bishop takes knight, queen takes bishop, now this square, queen to e4, is let loose because the knight is no longer there. So I think bishop takes is definitely the move that's going to happen. I mean, it's up there right on in front of your face as well. But I'm showing you the thought process of how this is happening. In the real world, there is no analysis board. This is just man to man. And so you have to learn how to think through this stuff. The queen's trapped, except for h4, or we can try to, counter exchange or free up squares like e4 if this knight is gone. So bishop takes knight is fairly obvious. So by process of elimination, we're eliminating the terrible move. Queen h4 didn't look too promising, but we had bishop takes knight, and when you do that, queen e4 is fine. We're dominating this light square diagonal again. So we've been talking about this happening, and now there's an option where this bishop takes knight makes it happen. So now, again, it doesn't take Magnus Carlsen. Gee, queen to h4 or queen to e4? Let me see. Well, my dad had a great one, and it was one of his great rules, was that, well, I see that if I'm Gukesh, I see that you have a dark squared bishop that has a good diagonal. I'm going to be on the light squares. Scram, sonny. So queen to h4 doesn't really look that impressive or attractive. Queen e4 is clearly the move. In a couple of these situations, I played exactly like a grandmaster, okay? It's not a difficult decision. But I'm giving you the, lead up to these moves within the rules that my father has given me. Okay, so now this knight has been a pain indirectly, but the ability of him to move to c6 means knight b4 could be quite useful. So let's see what's going on here. Not much here. Knight a3 or knight to d2. Knight b2, knight to d2 does have a threat of knight to b3. I don't really think it's really going to, I think knight a3 is probably better. And it is better. Now, again, I wasn't even paying attention. Let me go look and see. Knight a3 is what the engine is saying. But I didn't like knight to d2 because knight to b3 is a pseudo-active square. You really aren't doing anything of value. Now, again, getting to the point where queen can take b6 well, then on that, because you're going to have this knight to b5 as well as rook to b1. I'm not really worried about it. Rook d7. Now, this is one of the things called overprotection. All right. This is to give the b7 pawn protection, meaning that this knight is now free to jump to b4. So this is one of those. This is what Grandmaster Nimzovich said was prophylaxis. Okay, you want to protect this in advance of jumping. Okay, instead of jumping, queen takes pawn, obviously. So if you want to jump with this knight to b4, simply rook d7. There's no threat of an attack against the enemy king, so it's not a problem. I think that's a good move. So now he goes knight to c2. Now, whatever, bro. This is why Gukesh is who he is. He is a phenomenal player. His idea is like knight to c2 and then possibly rerouting knight f1, knight e1, knight f3, or also even knight a1, b3 with this, b file business with the rooks. Okay, now he took it. It's on. It's on. At some point, we're going to play, well, probably rook. This is another one. It's a toughie. The flexibility, if we play rook to b1, this rook doesn't have much future on the a file. So conceptually, looking again on a process of elimination, the rook doesn't have future on the a file. So rook a b1 is probably what's going to happen at some point, compared to, say, rook d b1. The rook on d has some potential on the e file because it's a half open file. All right. So conceptually, my thinking is rook a b1 is the move that will be played, which he played that. Now, I already knew he played rook a b1. I wrote this score down myself, and I remember writing the move. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about looking at the board in tournament face. Okay? So in tournament face, it's just you and the other dude over there. And this is the key. One of the things that players of this generation, 2024 as we are today, a lot of them have done a lot of computer work. All right? It's different. When you play on computer, it's different than when you play out there in the real world, okay, in a tournament game. It's different. There's nobody there. There's no, the familiarity factor is huge. All right. Comfortability blah, 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 is a real thing. Oh, it's easy to sit here looking at this computerchess.com board and go, oh, yeah, I'm rook A to B1, whatever, dude. Okay, when you're there in tournament phase and you can't take it back, there is no go back. That doesn't happen. It's different. I come from that world. I learned chess, in the late 1960s, all right, as a kid. I come from the real world of where we only had real world chess sets, okay? As the things have completely reversed. And that's a real value. All right, so now queen to c7. Again, you look at, there's a triple attack on b7 with a double defense. The third defender is the blocker on c6, the knight. So you have a rook hitting b7. The queen and bishop have an X-ray battery hitting b7. So you have queen, bishop, and rook attacking b7 if this knight ever moves. Now the knight could go to d8, and 3 versus 3, you're good. All right? But I'm just giving you the underlying current that's going on here. So now white's pieces have all developed. You know what to do. Ideas of knight takes d4 are starting to like leak into the position. Rook to b5. Now what does this move do for us? This move is super awesome. Notice this knight is paralyzed. The knight cannot play knight to a7. Now again, like I said, when a good player tells you they can't do something, that means they can't do it profitably. Knight a7, rook takes b7, and you are already in major league trouble. But what's happening here, rook b5 opens up the possibility of a double stack battery of rooks. This, he took that b pawn. Okay, count the pawns. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. White is a pawn down, yet the position, instead of being 1.0 ahead for black, is plus 0.35. White is actually winning. His initiative and dynamic forces are more important than black's twisted and constricted. Okay. And what happens here is this. And then this is an actual fact. When you're having to do what Ding is doing, it gets old. Now, it's at this level of grandmasters, it gets old slower than it gets old to you or myself, okay? Because they're up here, I'm over here, a lot of the rest of the people are way down here. It gets old to them super quick. But it does give you mental fatigue for a fact. All right, so this is the thing. Rook to b5 signals with a clarion call. Rook db1 is coming. So he's castling more so out of, I better get this dude out of trouble and maybe get this rook over here to b8. All right, that's what it's telling me. Now, I mean, look, he's already said rook b5. Rook db1 is coming. Oh, knight a1, he's a freak. Yes. This is this is why Gukesh is Gukesh. All right. He plays knight a1. It's like, well, I could just put this knight in the corner. That's the worst move possible on the board, right? Well, it is, except that knight b3 has the threat on a5, but really it has this unbelievable threat of knight to c5, adding a fourth attacker to this b7 pawn chump. What happens here as the pressure increases and increases and increases, if white ever takes this b pawn, his position is the black position is most likely going to collapse, because he's got bishop, queen, rook. When the knight goes to c5, he'll have the knight, and it's going to have rook on b1 having the other one. Every actual piece but the king is focused on b7. It's nasty stuff, man, I'm telling you. So he does play rook b8, like I mentioned. The game is relatively close, but black has got a free pawn. He's winning. Is the little kid chess player would go, well, black's winning. He's got a pawn. Yeah, he's not winning. White is winning here. This is where you feel white is winning. This is what you want to be doing in your games. Now, remember, Gukesh is one of the best in the world. Just an absolutely fantastic player. And it's really disgusting. You look at him. What's he got? Well, he's like 19 or 20 years old. Tall. great physical condition, good-looking guy, super nice. Man, he's super nice. It's like he's got everything. It's unbelievable. It's not fair, I tell you. But, that's okay. He's just a great guy. So I'm telling you, man, get this rook over here, stack him and rack him. Tomato, tomato. I'd have played rook to b1, but I'm not Gukesh. He's like, nah, there's no reason. I got knight a1. Let's go knight b3. I guess there's a slight flexibility again. This is the tension element. Knight b3, even if there's not technically a threat on a5 or technically a threat on d4, it's a mental trap is what it is. You want this knight tension. Play rook to b1, and then the last piece to put in position will be knight to c5. But every move, Ding is over there. He's using my dad's rule number 2. Doesn't even know that's what he's doing. What's he trying to do to me? He's going to take my a pawn. He's going to take my d pawn. Sacrifice for deflection, what have you. It gets old, baby, and I mean it gets old quick. Now, this is an obvious move. Get this guy off of his back position of e7 to e6 to give protection indirectly, so you don't require piece protection. He's got this f7 pawn is unassailable. So this is a great defensive pawn. Guards g6, guards e6. There's really nothing white can do. White's attack is not going to happen on the king side. All the pieces are pointing directly square at b7. He's such a jerk. Hey, move your rook, jerk. This, literally the phrasing of this is Gukesh is doing such a magnificent job. The position is playing itself. He's got masked threats of knight takes e6, pawn takes, queen takes. It's just ugliness. Okay, with ideas of bishop takes c6 as well. This pawn is semi-pinned, not pinned yet, but man, that rook, when rook goes to b1 with the double stack, you in trouble. So he attacks the rook. Rook move to the e7, defending b7. Now, once again, from the other side, we were looking at queen got to e4 to avoid Ding's dark square bishop. Rook to e7 uses my dad's rule. Hey, I noticed you have a strong light square bishop. I'm going to the dark squares, my brother. Look at this. Rook on the dark square, rook on the dark square, queen on the dark square, bishop on the dark square. Now, this is a classic opposite color bishops game. White's concentrating on the strength on the white squares with his bishop. Duh. Black doing the same thing to a degree defensively. He's not attacking dark squared targets, but he is positioning his pieces defensively so they're not at risk, which does help because you have this tension factor. Every move, it's like, oh my God, this is so old. Double stack. He's in trouble. We have how many attackers? Let's count the attackers on b7. I've got a bishop X-ray attacking b7. I got a queen X-ray attacking through the night to b7. I got 2 rooks directly attacking, one direct, one X-ray attack on b7, and I got a knight on b7. You got 1, 2, 3 defenders. You can get a 4th defender, but I got 5, dummy. You are in trouble. Or as my dad would say, you are in trouble. Because when my dad said you were in trouble, it's like you're in trouble, but goes up to another notch. So when my dad brings out the trouble, you are super in trouble. This is bogus, man. You're like, I'm a pawn up. This is the Ding perspective. I'm a pawn up, and this freak is over here dominating me. It's bogus, man. It's so bogus. And this was instantly seen by the grandmasters as a blunder. And this is the effect of tension. All right. This is tension in chess. In fact, that's what I'm going to call this title of this video is Tension in Chess. What happens? Well, the tension, I was telling you, it gets old. It gets old mentally. it gets old and you're like, you know, a 2700 grandmaster, that's Ding, played a move like a 1200 or, even lower player. Queen c8. It just absolutely loses to the instantaneous queen takes. Because look at this. You've got the pin. This pawn is pinned. You can't do squat. Queen takes knight, removes the defender on this rook. So if he ever plays queen takes, bishop takes, and if pawn takes, you lose the rook. So he loses a piece. Queen takes knight, queen takes queen, bishop takes, essentially bishop and queen take free knight. The queen's trade, it's bishop takes free knight. It's what my father would say. And, what are you going to do now, Bobby Fischer, right? So this is over. It's game over. There's nothing that Black can do except, he might as well just resign. You can sit there and take the beating, but why would you? It doesn't take Magnus Carlsen himself to see that you're toast, because this whole thing, as I told you, was you see when Gukesh did such a magnificent job of showcasing what's happening. I'm telling you it's coming. I'm telling you the avalanche is coming. And what happens? Queen takes c6 avalanche. I don't know what the right move is. What is the right move? Yeah, well, queen c6 is the game losing. Knight d8, knight to b4 blocking. Okay, this is the correct move. This, knocks this off here. And this is, at some point you can't hold this pawn as you see. So what this move does, knight to b4, is establishes this knight on this square, breaking contact of the twin rooks, or the twin towers, if you want to call it that. Here, oh, what the heck? Here, what to do? You can take it. Rook takes, or you can play, actually, knight takes might be better. If you have knight takes, because whenever, you'll be threatening again to take this a pawn. This is just nasty stuff, dude. Knight takes. Rook takes, queen takes, knight takes is another devastating endgame idea. Let's look at this. All right. Now let's go back and see what the computer says is the move. Knight takes b7 is the move that comes to mind because you have nasty threats. Knight takes a5 with a double, with the, attack on this back rank rook. So my experience tells me knight takes b7 is probably the move, but when you're playing a game like this and you have this tension, I want to look at the position, relieving the tension, playing rook takes, queen takes, knight takes, threatening this pawn, and with this bishop guarding the knight, knight can't go to c6. So I want to look at this endgame possibility. Okay, now what? Now this is evenish, but you're in trouble. I mean, what the heck are you doing? Oh, this is available as well. Okay, this is why rook takes is not the right idea. You've gone to an even endgame. We don't want to do that. And my tournament experience told me that was, probably not the right move. But I want to look at it visually now in tournament phase. I showed you the position that I would see in tournament phase, and my experience tells me that's not the right move. Rook takes is quite natural, but doesn't really work. Knight takes, this is a tension game. This whole game is tension. So what? What is going on here? Again, this is, still advantage. Yeah, this is advantage white because the queen is dominating e4, guarding this pawn. We're threatening to do stuff like just really knight to c5. And what are you going to do, Bobby Fischer? Okay, because the problem he's going to run into is with knight to c5, rook takes rook, c takes b4, and this is a protected passed pawn that's just devastating. This is ugliness. Black is, Black's problem is his position is materially even, but he doesn't have any moves. Look at this bishop. Bishop to d2 and bishop to c3. As my dad would so famously say, so what? What does that do? Doesn't do anything. You can do this literally. There's no way you can even stop this, but it doesn't do anything. And there's no threat of it to do anything. Gukesh's plan was just absolutely fantastic. That b6 pawn push idea is a kind of a stunning shocker visually, but dude, it's just nasty. This whole diagonal. I mean, what can you say? Literally, this plan is what's won the game, and it just fell apart because the pressure. When you've got this pressure of just every move, what's he trying to do to me? What's he trying to do to me? What's he trying to do to me? It's bogus. So we're looking at this game, and I thought it was great when I watched it. I mean, I didn't watch the whole game. When I saw, the different parts, I'm like, man, this is going great. This is going great. Gukesh is fantastic. Okay. One of my favorite players to watch, and it was like going through this, dude, it's way, way better than I thought. So, all hail Grandmaster Gukesh. I'm telling you, man, that guy was unbelievable. He makes it look so easy. It's not easy. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a great idea to have the application and explanation of what's going on in this game using my father's rules, because all I do is just, my dad just keeps looking like a champion left and right. So hope you guys enjoyed it. Tell your friends. This is the kind of stuff that will help you get better, because you're learning something that you don't ever see really in internet videos on YouTube. You don't see this tension, and this, magnificent strategy that you saw Gukesh implement. Just absolutely phenomenal. So thanks a lot for watching. I'll do another one. If Gukesh unleashes a beast again, I'm going to do another one of these. My guess is that he's going to win the championship at this point. This is the turning point type of event that you see. I'd expect him to be, he'll become the youngest world champion of all time, and more power to him. He's a phenomenal player, and like I say, he's just such a nice guy. So look forward to seeing you guys again in another video. Check out my other stuff, man. Check out Mega Training if you want to get some of this stuff. I'm telling you. Look forward to seeing you guys again in another video. And as always, like and subscribe. Man, that guy was good.